Episode 108 from the UK, Dane Cobain. Welcome, friends, to the Realm. I'm J.V. Hilliard. Glad to have everybody back. Today we've got a very special guest, a horror author, a thriller author, longtime friend from across the pond in the United Kingdom, Dane Cobain. Dane is not just an author, he's also a poet. He also plays in a band. He has his own radio show, so he's an all-around general creative. And Dane, welcome to the Realm today. Nice to have you on.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, look, I know that you've got a launch of a new book that's coming out. Why don't you give us a little rundown on what you've got going on, and congratulations on the launch.
Cheers. Yeah. Well, so the new book is the Leipfold Files, which is book 3 in my Leipfold series. It's a cozy detective series. I kind of envisioned it as Miss Marple meets Twitter, basically. So you have your sort of curmudgeonly, not that old, but old school private detective, and then his young hip assistant who's a computer whiz kid. And they investigate various crimes. The first 2 books are sort of standalone novels. There is like a storyline that sort of sits alongside them. And this new book is a short story collection. And the reason I wrote this was there have been throughout the series sort of little references to the past. So we know things like James Leipfold, he was in the army. He used to be an alcoholic. He spent some time in jail. So the short stories really dig into all of that. They look into his past. They look into why and how he created his detective agency. It was just good to go back and sort of delve into the past. Let's
talk a little bit about the book. I've read the first in the series. I'm halfway through the second, and I just ordered the third. Who's your favorite character and why?
Well, that's a really difficult one. Probably Miley. Miley's the most like me. And she gets a lot of really snarky lines of dialogue, which make me laugh to write them. I do really like Leipfold as well. I mean, they've all got bits of my personality behind them. And so, yeah, they're all kind of fun in different ways. But
do you find that common in your writing, where there's Dane Cobain in every character?
Yeah, I would say so, to varying amounts. You know, some of it might be like 5%, and then some it's closer to like 80%. But yeah, there's always a certain amount of me, but it's normally me mixed with other people as well.
So Dane, I know that this new book is the third in a series, but you've also written a number of standalone books. Which one do you like better, and why series versus standalone, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's a great question. I prefer doing standalones. I think they're also easier in a way because, for example, with the Leipfold series, with every new book, I have to plan further along. It's actually got to the point where I don't know what's going to happen next. So that is always a problem with series. But series are great because they're much more marketable. You know, if you get somebody to read the first book, it's a lot easier to get them to read books 2 and 3. But I've always been the kind of writer where I write stuff and then worry about promoting it after it's done.
Yeah, you like to get it out of your system, right? Now, was there something in your life that brought the idea of the series to you, or how did you come up with the origins of the story?
Funnily enough, I had the idea for the second book first, and that was originally, it was going to be called Netflix and Kill, but due to legal reasons, we were unable to do that, so it became the Tower Hill Terror. But that's basically about a serial killer who's using dating apps as their sort of modus operandi. But I needed to introduce the characters before we told that story. And then I was on Facebook one day, and there was just a meme on there, and it said like 21st century murder mystery weapons. And one of them was a self-driving car. So I was like, well, what if the car kills somebody, but there's nobody behind the wheel? So that's how that idea for that came.
You know, first of all, the Netflix and Kill title would have been great. You know, everybody knows what Netflix and chill means. I also like what you said about, you know, kind of dropping in new technologies. And I think that also asks questions societally, you know, like we are soon going to be seeing self-driving vehicles. We already see them. It is strange. Like, who holds the liability on that? Not to get too far into the legal aspect of it, but you're right.
Yeah. And you're spot on there. That's one of the things I've been really fascinated with, is where that liability lies. These are questions we don't have an answer to yet. And I just think they're fascinating.
Obviously, you and I interact a lot on the writing stuff. But my next question for you is, of the creative projects that you're involved in, whether they're music, whether they're radio, whether they're, you know, some of the stuff you're doing in private life, what's your favorite and why?
Well, it's always been writing. Ever since I was a kid, really. I used to write sort of stories and poems. I remember when I was about 5, I used to write lyrics to songs. My dad used to play in a 60s rock and roll band. And then, I learned to play guitar when I was about 14 and started writing songs from there. So music is really what I do as like an outlet. And then the radio I kind of fell into, and it's weird. So I think I'm on about 120 episodes now, doing one a week. And I never thought it would last this long. It's a lot of fun to talk to different people and to get these different insights, and it's a good networking tool and all of that. But I think everything kind of all feeds back into my writing. If I could only do one thing, it would be writing books. I don't know if I could confine myself to a single genre. I guess if I had to, it would be horror.
So, Dane, as a horror author, what triggers an audience? What is the kind of stuff that you embed in your novels that pull people like me in and will keep us reading?
It's an interesting one. I think with all books, you're trying to create some sort of emotional reaction in the reader. And obviously horror and fear is one of those like most primal reactions. For me, I've always found the way that horror writers do it best is when they take something that people are already afraid of or something that's already unpleasant and then write about that. So Stephen King is the master of this. So clowns, for example, people were afraid of clowns and then he wrote It, and then people were even more afraid of clowns.
Yeah, that's a great point. That kind of stuff, I guess, does trigger.
The other thing I think is really interesting with horror is when people use like the horror of the way that people act towards other people. So, you can do a supernatural horror and there's a vampire or a zombie or whatever, and that can be scary, but actually it's scarier to think that the people you walk past on the street every day could be secretly a murderer with, 10 victims in their basement or something.
Yeah, that part's true. I think that's why everybody fears serial killers these days.
Yeah.
They don't know who their neighbors are.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're almost out of time, but I have something that I've instilled into each of my interviews. We call it the lightning round, right? So it's a speed round. I've got a bunch of questions for you. 1 or 2 word answers right off the top of your head. You cool with that?
All right. Yeah, I'll do my best.
All right. So question number 1, since you said horror was your favorite, what is your favorite horror novel?
Probably The Stand.
Stephen King, huh? Not bad at all. All right. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars, easy.
All right. Doctor Who or Made in Chelsea? And don't lie. Doctor, come on.
I've never seen Made in Chelsea.
Oh man, Dane, I'm telling you, I hate to admit this. I'll whisper it because I'm already embarrassed about. I'm addicted to that show. I don't get it, but I can't help but watch that show. I'm a Doctor Who too, but behind the scenes, I'm a Made in Chelsea fan. So DC Comics or Marvel Universe?
Well, neither, but I guess DC.
DC. I'm a DC guy too, so good.
I don't do superheroes in general, so
no,
I think that's why I chose DC, is because I'm so sick of Marvel.
Well, yeah, Marvel's been just churning it out. So
yeah.
All right, last question: your favorite horror villain, and it doesn't have to come from your books, but any horror villain.
It might be Pennywise.
From It, huh? So you're a big Stephen King guy, I see.
Yeah, I've got a tattoo. I don't even see it. Hang on, there it is. I've got a tattoo of It there on my arm.
All right. Well, hey, that's something I didn't know. But hey, again, Dane, we appreciate you on the show. Thank you very much. And as always, it's great talking to you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, sir. Having an interview with Dane is always entertaining. You never even know what direction it's going. And for him, I learned a lot today. Even though we're authors, we write in different genres. Learning about how a horror author writes horror novels, I think is incredible. And I do enough epic fantasy that includes dark fantasy that I learned a few lessons today that I'm going to include in my future novels. Speaking of future novels, Voradin's Lair, the second book in my series, is going to be launching in August. I know many of you are aware of that. The first book, The Last Keeper, is being turned into a game that's going to be using the metaverse. This is a blended reality game that will include augmented and virtual reality. And I hope to have the CEO of the company that's doing it on a future show of the Realm. Thank you very much for watching. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show. And until then, may your gods go with you.